Your soulmate's biggest marriage secret was finally exposed by a stranger. My beloved child. The stranger who exposed your soulmate's biggest marriage secret was never supposed to know anything about you. That is what makes what happened so unsettling. Your soulmate had spent months keeping one part of their marriage story carefully buried, avoiding certain questions and changing the subject whenever someone came too close. Then, without warning, someone they barely knew looked directly at them and mentioned a detail that made their entire expression change. It happened during an ordinary conversation, in a place where nobody expected anything dramatic. The stranger had overheard a name, recognized a connection, and suddenly asked, "Does the person you truly wanted to marry know what really happened?" Your soulmate froze. Not because the question was embarrassing, but because only a handful of people were supposed to know there had ever been another plan. And somehow, this stranger knew there was. Don't skip, because what they revealed next suggested that your soulmate's marriage situation may have started very differently from the story everyone was told. At first, your soulmate tried to laugh it off. They said the stranger must have confused them with somebody else. But the stranger didn't back down. Instead, they mentioned a conversation from months earlier involving your soulmate's family, a marriage arrangement, and one condition your soulmate had quietly refused to accept. That single detail destroyed the excuse. Your soulmate went silent. Their hands tightened around what they were holding, and someone nearby noticed immediately. Why would one simple condition affect them so deeply? Because according to the stranger, your soulmate had been under enormous pressure to choose a future that looked perfect from the outside while their heart was pulling somewhere else. And there was more. The stranger claimed your soulmate had once said something privately that completely changed the meaning of everything. "I can agree to what they want, but I cannot promise them my heart." Those words had never reached you. Until now. But if your soulmate never gave their heart to the marriage everyone believed they accepted, then who had they been protecting all this time? That question followed your soulmate long after the conversation should have ended. They wanted to leave, yet before they could, the stranger pulled out their phone and searched for something. Your soulmate's face changed again. This time, it wasn't fear. It looked like recognition. The stranger had proof that the marriage secret wasn't simply about pressure from family or an unwanted decision. There had been a hidden agreement made before everything became public, and your soulmate had apparently added one request of their own. A request involving you. "Stay till the end," the stranger quietly said, almost as though they understood how serious this was becoming. Then they turned the phone toward your soulmate. On the screen was an old message with a date your soulmate remembered instantly. They read the first few lines, swallowed hard, and whispered, "How did you get this?" The stranger didn't answer immediately. They only scrolled down to the final sentence, the sentence that revealed what your soulmate had demanded before agreeing to anything about marriage. And the moment your soulmate saw those words, they realized the secret they had protected for so long was about to lead straight back to you. Your soulmate stared at that final sentence as if the entire room had disappeared around them. It said that before any marriage decision could move forward, they needed time to settle something unfinished with "the person I never stopped choosing in my heart." No name appeared in the message, but your soulmate knew exactly who it meant. You. Suddenly, the stranger's knowledge made sense, but only partly. Your soulmate demanded to know where the message came from, and the answer created an even bigger mystery. The stranger explained that someone connected to the marriage discussions had saved copies of several conversations because they feared the truth would eventually be rewritten. And apparently, it had been. Everyone around your soulmate had been told that they willingly moved forward and left their feelings for you behind. But this message suggested the opposite. Your soulmate had asked for time specifically because they were still hoping for one final chance with you. So why did that chance never reach you? The stranger hesitated before revealing the next clue. There had been another message sent only hours after your soulmate made that request, but it wasn't written by your soulmate. Someone else had stepped into the situation and claimed you had already moved on. They said contacting you would only create humiliation, confusion, and unnecessary pain. Your soulmate believed it because the message contained personal details convincing enough to sound genuine. That was the moment everything changed. Instead of reaching out, your soulmate withdrew. They interpreted your silence as confirmation that you no longer wanted them, while you may never have known they were waiting for you at all. Don't skip, because the stranger noticed something even more disturbing in those old exchanges. The person discouraging your soulmate from contacting you wasn't simply offering advice. They appeared to be controlling what information traveled in both directions. And when your soulmate finally asked, who sent that message, the stranger gave them a name they never expected to hear. Your soulmate went completely still. It was someone they had trusted during the most vulnerable period of the marriage discussions, someone who repeatedly claimed they were protecting everyone from heartbreak. Now the old conversations painted a different picture. Dates didn't match. Certain messages had been forwarded without context. Important replies were missing. And one conversation appeared to have been deliberately cut short right before your soulmate asked whether you still cared. Suddenly, their biggest marriage secret became something far more painful than simply admitting they had loved you while facing pressure to marry someone else. They began wondering whether the decision they had lived with was built on information that had been manipulated from the beginning. But the stranger still hadn't shown them everything. There was one final saved exchange from that same night, timestamped just minutes after your soulmate supposedly received confirmation that you had moved on. The stranger opened it slowly and said, "Before you blame yourself, you need to see who they contacted next." Your soulmate looked at the name on the screen, and what they saw made them realize you might have been much closer to discovering the truth than anyone ever told them. The name on that screen belonged to someone who had known both sides of the story. Someone who had spoken to you around the same time your soulmate was being told you had moved on. Your soulmate's voice dropped as they asked the stranger to open the conversation, and there it was. A message asking that person to keep you away from anything connected to the marriage discussions. The reason given sounded harmless: it will only hurt them more. But the next line changed everything. It warned that if you discovered your soulmate was hesitating because of you, you might reach out and complicate the decision. Your soulmate read those words twice. Their breathing changed. This wasn't someone protecting two people from heartbreak. Someone had apparently been terrified that one honest conversation between you and your soulmate could change the entire outcome. And suddenly your soulmate had only one question: what exactly had you been told during those same crucial hours? The stranger had wondered that too. So they showed your soulmate another saved exchange, this one revealing that a completely different version of events may have been passed toward you. According to that conversation, you were supposed to believe your soulmate had made their choice confidently and wanted no interference. Meanwhile, your soulmate was being told you had emotionally closed the door. Two people. Two different stories. One carefully maintained distance. Your soulmate leaned back, visibly shaken, because memories that never made sense were suddenly connecting. The unanswered message. The strange silence. The abrupt change in someone's behavior whenever your name appeared. Even the marriage announcement had happened sooner than your soulmate expected, almost as though someone wanted everything finalized before questions could be asked. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" your soulmate whispered. The stranger answered with something colder, maybe because they knew what you would have done. And your soulmate didn't need to ask what that meant. They knew exactly what they would have done. They would have come looking for you. But before your soulmate could process that realization, the stranger revealed why they had finally decided to expose everything. They weren't randomly carrying old messages or searching for drama. Someone had recently contacted them asking whether any copies of those conversations still existed. That person wanted the records deleted. Stay with this, because that meant the secret wasn't safely buried in the past anymore. Someone was still worried about what would happen if you learned the full story. Your soulmate immediately asked when the deletion request had arrived. The stranger turned the phone around. It had been sent only 3 nights ago. And beneath it was another message, one your soulmate had never seen, mentioning you directly and warning that you were getting too close to finding out. Your soulmate's eyes locked onto those words. Because if someone believed you were already getting close, then something had happened recently that neither you nor your soulmate understood yet. And the stranger knew exactly what it was. The stranger lowered their voice before explaining what had happened. 3 days earlier, someone connected to those old marriage discussions had unexpectedly asked about you. Not casually. They wanted to know whether you had recently contacted anyone from your soulmate's past, whether you had discovered an old photograph, or whether somebody had finally told you about the promise your soulmate made before the marriage decision moved forward. That word, promise, caught your soulmate immediately. "What promise?" they asked. The stranger hesitated, then opened another saved message. Your soulmate had apparently written it during the most emotional night of the entire situation, but they barely remembered sending it. The words were unmistakable: "If there is even one real chance that they still want me, I need to know before I make a decision I can't undo." Your soulmate stared at the screen. Someone had seen that message. Someone knew exactly how much one truthful answer from you could have changed everything. Yet instead of delivering that answer, they buried the question. Then came the detail that hurt even more. A reply had existed. Not directly from you, but from someone who had spoken with you and reported that you were confused, deeply hurt, and still asking questions about your soulmate. That message should have reached them. It never did. Instead, your soulmate received a shortened version claiming you had accepted the situation and wanted distance. One sentence had been removed. The sentence saying you still cared. Your soulmate covered their mouth and looked away, suddenly remembering how quickly they had stopped fighting after receiving that message. They had believed continuing to reach for you would disrespect your wishes. But now the stranger was showing them that your wishes may never have been represented honestly. Something huge was waiting for them inside the rest of that exchange, though, because whoever edited the message had left behind a tiny mistake. The original timestamp. And that timestamp proved the full version had been received before your soulmate was given the altered one. Your soulmate's sadness turned into determination. They asked the stranger to send them everything, screenshots, dates, names, every conversation that could still be recovered. But the stranger didn't move. Instead, they asked one question: are you prepared for what happens when you see the last file? Your soulmate frowned. Apparently, there was more than text evidence. There was an audio recording made during a private conversation shortly before the marriage plans became public. Your soulmate had never known it existed. The stranger said the recording contained 3 voices, and one of them openly admitted why you had to be kept away until the decision was finalized. Your soulmate reached for the phone, but the stranger pulled it back for 1 second and warned, "Once you hear this, you cannot pretend the past happened the way you were told." Then they pressed play. At first there was only background noise. A chair moved. Someone sighed. And then a familiar voice said your name, followed by 7 words that made your soulmate's eyes fill instantly: "If those 2 speak, this marriage disappears." For several seconds, your soulmate couldn't say anything. That familiar voice belonged to someone who had stood beside them throughout the marriage discussions, reassuring them that everything happening was for the best. Yet on the recording, that same person sounded completely different. Calm. Deliberate. Certain that keeping you apart was necessary. Then another voice asked, "What if they find out later?" The answer came immediately: "By then, the decision will already be made." Your soulmate's face tightened. This was no misunderstanding anymore. Someone had understood exactly what might happen if you and your soulmate spoke honestly before the marriage plans became public. But the recording continued, and suddenly a third voice interrupted with a question nobody expected: "And what about the letter?" Your soulmate looked sharply at the stranger. "What letter?" they whispered. The stranger didn't answer. They simply let the audio continue. The next few seconds exposed a secret even the stranger hadn't fully explained. Apparently, your soulmate had written something for you during that final period of uncertainty, a private letter they intended to deliver before making any permanent decision. Your soulmate slowly remembered it. They had written it late at night, folded it by hand, and trusted someone close to make sure it reached you. Inside, they had admitted they were under pressure, that the marriage situation wasn't what it appeared to be, and that they needed one honest answer from you. But you never responded. Your soulmate had spent all this time believing your silence was the answer. Now the recording suggested something else entirely. One voice asked whether the letter had been delivered, and after a long pause, someone replied, "No. It's still with me." Your soulmate's eyes filled. Don't skip, because the next question was even more important. If that letter never reached you, where had it been all these years? The stranger stopped the recording and reached into a worn folder they had kept beside them. Your soulmate immediately understood. Their hands began trembling before anything was even removed. Inside was an envelope, slightly faded around the edges, with handwriting your soulmate recognized as their own. And across the front was your name. The letter had never been opened. Never delivered. Never rejected. All those years of believing you had read their heart and chosen silence collapsed in a single moment. But one mystery remained. How had this stranger ended up with it? They explained that the person who kept the letter had recently tried to destroy several old records, and the envelope was discovered among them. Your soulmate reached toward it, but the stranger held it for one more second. "There's something attached to the back," they said. Your soulmate turned the envelope over and saw a small handwritten note added by someone else years later. It contained a date, a location, and one chilling sentence: "This is the night they almost found each other." That date hit your soulmate harder than anything else. They remembered that night. They had gone to the exact location written on the envelope after hearing a rumor that you might be there, but someone called them minutes before they arrived and insisted you had already left. Your soulmate turned around without ever stepping inside. Now the stranger revealed the missing piece: you had reportedly been there much longer than they were told. For a brief window, the two of you may have been only minutes apart. Your soulmate stared at the handwritten note, replaying the memory differently. Why had that phone call come at exactly the right moment to stop them? And who knew they were heading there? The stranger opened another record and pointed to a short exchange sent that same evening: "They're coming. Make sure they don't meet." Suddenly, what once looked like terrible timing felt far less accidental. Your soulmate wanted names now, not theories. The stranger showed them who had sent the warning, and the answer reopened an old wound. It was the same trusted person whose voice appeared on the recording. But another detail complicated everything. Minutes after that warning, someone else had replied, "You're taking this too far. Tell them the truth." That second person had apparently tried to stop the interference, and then vanished from every conversation that followed. Stay till the end, because your soulmate immediately recognized the initials beside that reply. They belonged to someone who had unexpectedly left the family circle shortly after the marriage plans became public. Everyone had been told there was simply a disagreement. Now your soulmate wondered whether the disagreement had actually been about you. If this person had tried to expose the truth years ago, perhaps the stranger wasn't the first person who attempted to reveal the secret. Then the stranger finally explained why they had come forward now. That missing person had recently contacted them and handed over the remaining records, including the unopened letter. They were tired of carrying what they knew and wanted your soulmate to see everything before another major decision was made. But there was one condition: your soulmate needed to hear their explanation directly. The stranger placed a phone on the table and said, "They're waiting for your call." Your soulmate hesitated, then dialed. 1 ring. 2. 3. Finally, a voice answered. Your soulmate recognized it instantly. There was silence on both ends before the person said, "I've wanted to tell you this for years." Your soulmate asked the only question that mattered: "Did they really keep us apart?" The voice answered softly, "Yes, but that isn't the biggest secret." Your soulmate gripped the phone tighter. Then came the revelation that changed the entire meaning of the marriage story: the marriage wasn't originally supposed to happen when it did. Someone moved the date forward because they discovered you were planning to go back for them. Your soulmate felt the room tilt beneath them. The marriage date had always seemed strangely rushed, but they had accepted the explanation that circumstances demanded it. Now the voice on the phone described what happened behind closed doors. Someone had discovered your soulmate was preparing to find you personally, no intermediaries, no family opinions, no messages passed through other people. They had written down where they believed you would be and planned to leave before sunrise. But before they could go, the marriage timeline suddenly changed. Calls were made. Relatives were told arrangements could no longer wait. Your